Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Love Learns. We're back again with the Love is Blind Season 7 series. This week we are going to be talking about another couple. But firstly, this video will have spoilers because I'm going to be talking about different aspects of the show. So if you haven't watched the series up to the weddings, then that's probably where we're going to go. So probably go watch it and then come back and watch this video. Just to let you know, I do not know these couples. I have not spoken to these couples. This is all based off of the TV show that we have watched and we all love. But there is no understanding behind these things. These are all theories based on what we've seen from the TV show, and it is edited, so there's things that we probably haven't seen that could inform this analysis, but I don't know about them. So we're only analysing what we see on the show. So yes, if you haven't watched it, go ahead and watch it. But yeah, so yes, let's get into it. This week we're going to be talking about a very interesting couple because they had conflict before they even got out of the pods, because there was a love triangle and that conflict kind of informed their relationship, I think, as well. And it informed me a bit about them as well, because in the relationships we start to see, in the pods we start to see patterns that they both exhibit that could have shifted some of the things that could have happened outside of the pods. But I think we start off on a very high level of facade, if you know what I mean. So if you know this couple, you probably know and have already guessed, this is Nick and Hannah, and their relationship was very interesting because they were both the youngest couples in the quarters this year. So she was the youngest girl and he was the youngest guy. But they both had very different ideas around like romance. Nick was described by Hannah as very charming. Nick described Hannah as very much bubbly and very like easy to get on with and fun. So I think with those kinds of images of each other, they kind of had already painted a picture of who they were. We see with Hannah, she was in the love triangle with Leo and found it very hard to decide if she wanted to be with Leo or if she wanted to be with Nick. And I think when she found out that Leo also had someone else that he was comparing with, she panicked, because initially she broke up with Nick because all the girls around her made the decision for her, really, by letting her know that he's just the charmer, he's gonna like break your heart, he's the kind of guy, without really meeting him, but getting just from the facade that he gave in the first speed datings, all the girls kind of had that initial reaction to who he was, as him being just a playboy here for fun, and not really a serious candidate for the experience. But then you have Hannah breaking up with him and allowing someone else to make the decision for her, which were the girls in the quarters, and then finding out that Leo, who was her number one pick at that time, also had another connection, so she could also lose Leo. So in order for her not to lose Leo, she called Nick back into the pods and had a conversation to kind of continue getting to know each other. I think at this point we start to recognize that Hannah has a tendency to allow others to make decisions for her rather than her making her own decisions, which is very interesting because she's very critical, as we see throughout the season, that she's very critical of other people. And I think that level of criticism that she does have seems to stem from a level of criticism of herself, and who she feels like she needs to be. When she was in the pods with Nick, she described herself as like a Taylor Swift, and selling more of an image of herself rather than selling her emotional and personality. However, when we go into the confessionals, she does have a sense of, I just hope they're not here for my looks and stuff. But she was also leading with her looks and how she was in high school as a cheerleader, dating the jocks and stuff. So I think she had put herself in that box. But when Nick mentioned about, oh, you would look so good in a bikini, she criticizes him for saying that, even though she's already been leading with her appearance. So it's like, if you don't want someone to comment on your appearance, don't lead with your appearance, kind of thing. So it was a very interesting dynamic that she had in the pods, not just with Nick, but also with Leo. We could see that she was very much finding it difficult to make decisions. So she would always try and wait for someone to make the decision for her. I'm not sure if it's a technique in order for her to blame if things don't go right, because then I wasn't responsible for that because you picked this. But she was okay to make that decision when the girls said it. And I think that the backing of the girls helped her make that decision. But as soon as she found out that there was competition, she retracted that decision because it wasn't beneficial for her. On paper, we see Hannah has the job that she wants. She's very self-sufficient. She's got herself together. So on paper, she's ready for marriage. But as the season goes on, we see there's a strong level of emotional disconnect that I would say was happening within herself. I think there was a lot of conflict within her with her emotions in this season, because she doesn't really think about the other person. She tends to think about her gain from the relationship. For example, a lot of the time she kept on putting Nick down because he lived at home with his parents, or because she was in the job that she wanted, or that he'd moved from football into real estate, but he wasn't making a lot of money in real estate yet. So there was a lot of questioning around their compatibility, even though she was convinced that she loved him. But she didn't love him for who he was in the here and now. She loved him for who he could be, and who she could make him to be. And she even comes out to say, oh, I made you the man that you are. Like, you were a boy before me and now you're a man. So I feel like she's used to fixing things and getting things from a state that she feels isn't good enough to good enough in order for her to feel good enough. She bases her worth on how she can perform. And I think that is where the downfall of this whole relationship went down the drain, because Hannah started to play the parent role in the relationship, and at one point Nick started to play the rebellious / adaptive child. Like, when they were on the honeymoon, he started with the rebellious child, which is like, oh, I'm going to do a duck race, jump on the ducks and do a duck race kind of thing. And then when he saw the backlash of that after he came off the race with that woman, he decided, oh, okay, this is not a good way to go about it. The rebellious side of me won't work in this situation. I have to be a little bit more adaptive. And from that point on, we start to see him shift into adaptive child. But Hannah was very much stuck in a critical parent mode, telling him how to boil like pasta. We see it when it comes to them talking about finances, down, like, I wouldn't want to say emasculating, but it felt like her talking down to a child kind of vibe that she kept on giving, which isn't attractive in any relationship, to be fair. Like, you don't want to be dating your mom, you don't want to be dating your dad. There needs to be a sense of adult to adult conversations. And at one point, I think Nick started to get very tired of that dynamic and started to shift into his adult. So there was one instance when Hannah asked, oh, do you think you're mature enough for marriage? And he says yes, but then follows up with a question, being curious about the question that she asked, because he knew that it threw him off. Like, if I wasn't ready for marriage, I wouldn't be in this process. But instead of becoming combative with his language, he adapts his thought into do you feel like you're ready to marry me? Because then if you're saying I'm immature, then you're going to be marrying an immature person. So without saying it, he was saying, like, look at yourself, don't look at just me. There's two people in this relationship, and we need to figure out our dynamic together rather than it being solely on me to improve. And he also brings it up in their final date as well, letting Hannah know, like, I feel like you think you're above me. And she confirms it. She says, yes, I do. I feel like I'm up here. You need to, like, get up there with me. Like, there's a standard. So by her just saying that, she's already put herself in a position to feel superior to him, which automatically puts you in a parent mode. And if that is the way you feel, you're always going to be dating his potential rather than who he is in the here and now. And by dating someone in their potential, you tend to idolize certain things of how you want your future to be and project that ideas onto your partner, which could bring frustration and anger from your partner, because the future that we have is the future that we have. We don't need to focus on that, and it doesn't need to be, we don't need to add anxiety to this relationship focusing on what you want the future to look like, where it needs to be a collaborative thing. It's not me in your world, it's our world, and learning how to live our dynamic within our world. And I feel like on paper, Hannah would have been a perfect wife if it was just based on what you need to tick on how to be a wife, like having a job, being able to take care of the house, being able to take care of finances. All these things are great things. But at the same time, I don't think she was self-aware on how her bringing herself into the relationship looks like within a relationship, and her expectations weren't very much expressed in the beginning. They were very passive aggressive. When she wanted to get something across, it was very passive aggressive. If she wanted to express her emotions, we see it on the honeymoon when she was upset with Nick rebelling around the duck race thing. We see her point out these things about Nick, but not really recognizing that she was jealous in that moment. She felt a certain way in that moment. She felt like she wasn't enough in that moment. But instead of verbalizing that with Nick and having a conversation around these issues with Nick, we weren't able to get resolution for those things either. So the more I watched their dynamic, the more I knew that they weren't going to get married, because there was a sense of superiority from Hannah's side, and there was also a sense of immaturity from Nick's side, but Nick was actively trying to break those things down. And I think when he had that conversation with Katie, I think her name is, who was from the pods as well, who was also his second choice but dumped him, he started to recognize himself in this situation, which is, I put on the front and I present myself in a certain way in order to get the ladies, but really there's another side to me that I would like to explore, but I haven't explored. And the fact that he said that he hadn't been in any relationships before this relationships, you could tell he was still figuring things out as he was going along. He was trying to understand, and he made that clear in the pod. So Hannah should have recognized that. But I think with the self-awareness as well, when they were on the honeymoon, the day after that incident happened, Hannah does say, like, I'm being too harsh on him, I need to relax a little bit. But she doesn't really go into it too much. Like, she doesn't try to break down, like, what do I need to be doing? Why do I feel this way? What is going on with me? Why am I being this critical? Why am I being like this? What's going on? But she focuses it more on Nick rather than herself, which is a very interesting tactic. But if you are someone who is quite critical, a lot of the times it's easier for you to criticize others because you're so used to criticizing yourself and putting yourself down that when you are in those dynamics, you try to big yourself up because you've been very critical of yourself your whole life. So you've done things to kind of improve. So now you feel like, I've improved myself to this standard, so everyone else needs to come to that standard too, which you end up projecting your issues onto someone else, which she does with Nick, which is a very interesting dynamic, because we see that the time she decides that she's going to end the relationship is the time where she's going to be compared to other people in their wedding dresses. So I wonder if that was the breaking point for her, because at this point you're being compared, and I don't know if it was her body image that she had struggled with in the pods that she was now thinking was going to be an issue, or if it was the conversation that she had had with her friends and Nick about Nick and their lifestyle differences, and him having to change a lot of things in order for him to fit into her world. But it doesn't seem like there was an understanding that it's our world. It was very much Hannah's world and Nick's in it. So it was a very interesting dynamic for the two of them. And with Nick, I wasn't sure if he was there for the relationship or if he was there for the fame. And I think it might have been a bit of both. He really did want to learn about relationships, but I feel like in that scenario, Hannah had let him go, so he could have gone home. But the fact that Hannah called him back, he saw another opportunity to be with Hannah again. And I'm not sure if it was to be with Hannah again or to be on the show for longer, because all his options were gone. So it does make me think, was it because she called him back? And why did he also go back when she called him back? Because someone has already decided they don't want you and they're looking to pursue things with someone else, but at the same time they're calling you back. So why did you call me back? And she said her head was all over the place, the girls were making the decision for me, da 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 da. So from then on, I would have said to myself in that conversation with Hannah, if I was Nick, so what would change your mind outside of this experiment? Like, if your friends were to say, he ain't it, does that mean it is it? So maybe that was the reason why she ended things, because that conversation that she had with the girls in the living quarters was replaying itself, but with her own friends. And it happened twice, so maybe it's time to let this go. There was also, I don't know if this parent dynamic also came into play when, because of their heights. I know they're the same heights, but when you look at Hannah in heels, she's slightly taller than Nick. And I'm not sure if that looking down feeling came through when she was in heels. So that's one thing we could think about. One thing of that heightened that dynamic between them, the height difference, or lack of height difference. So yeah, I wonder what you think about this, what you think about Hannah and Nick's dynamic, and how this could affect your relationships. Have you ever been in a parent-child dynamic in a relationship? And if you have been, how did you spot that dynamic, and how did you get out of that pattern if you're still in a relationship with that person? Or how did you learn better to not do it in the second or next relationship? So yeah, I would love to hear from you guys. So if you have made it to the end of this video, thank you for making it this far. I really appreciate having these conversations with you guys and getting to know more and more about you and what you want. And again, as I said in the last video, if you do have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover, please leave them in the comments and we will have a conversation about that. So if you haven't already, please like, comment and share this video so that more and more people get to watch it. On that note, guys, I am going to love and leave you, and I will see you next week. Take care, guys. Bye.